"Dad, I think someone hacked your car." The words came out before Isaiah could stop them, trembling in the hallway air like a window cracked too wide during a storm. The man at the kitchen counter didn't flinch. Cameron Rivers simply looked up from his tablet, the soft glow of weather data reflected in his reading glasses, his smoothie halfway to his mouth. "What was that, champ?" he asked, his voice relaxed, almost amused. Isaiah hesitated, heart pounding, breath shaky. Savannah Lee, Cameron's girlfriend, was already pouring coffee like she owned the place, her movement crisp, her smile warm, but her eyes flicked toward Isaiah for a fraction of a second, calculating. Isaiah swallowed and stood straighter. "I think someone tampered with the Vantage 1. Silence, heavy and immediate. The kind that didn't just question a boy's word, it erased it. The house, nestled in the quiet hills of Boulder, Colorado, was everything a tech magnate would call home. Solar roofs, voice-activated temperature control, stone floors that heated with each step. But beneath the gloss and innovation, it was too quiet. Like someone had pressed pause on real life 3 years ago. That was when Cameron lost his wife and only son to a black ice spinout on Highway 119, the prototype Vantage braking system failing to prevent what a driverless car should have avoided. Since then, the house had become a shrine to silence. And Isaiah, a foster child who didn't belong in the family photos, had become a footnote no one read. At 11, he wasn't supposed to notice things, wasn't supposed to question Savannah's 2:14 a.m. trips to the garage, wasn't supposed to know what override mode meant. But Isaiah had grown up fast, too fast, learning to recognize fake smiles and scripted compassion. Last night, while the house slept, he saw Savannah enter the garage and access the prototype system directly, navigating the panels behind the firewall like someone who knew every line of code intimately. He stayed hidden in the shadows, heart hammering as her fingers moved with precision. This morning, he accessed the diagnostics logs the way Ethan once taught him Ethan, Cameron's real son, the boy who once let Isaiah tag along for a few hours before calling him annoying. 1 hour. That's all it took to change Isaiah's life. 1 hour where Ethan showed him how the Vantage diagnostic layer worked and where hidden commands could be tucked beneath glossy UI facades. And now, Isaiah had found something a ghost login with admin clearance, diagnostic overrides buried under a false normal mask. He was only 11, but even he knew sabotage when he saw it. "Savannah," Cameron said with a light chuckle, "you didn't happen to reprogram my car in your sleep, did you?" Savannah smiled wide, almost playfully. "Guilty," she teased. "I couldn't sleep, went to check if the garage door was closed. Maybe I bumped something." Isaiah locked eyes with her. "You entered override mode," he said, his voice firmer than expected. "You bypassed the safety cue." Her smile didn't waver, but her tone dipped into condescending concern. "Override mode," she cooed. "Sweetheart, I don't even know what that means." Cameron sighed and set his smoothie down. "Okay, that's enough, Isaiah. I appreciate your concern, really. But the car was cleared last night by 10 engineers. Nothing's wrong." "But I said enough." His voice cut like a cold gust through Isaiah's chest. Savannah leaned closer, her voice soft with faux sympathy. "I know it's hard adjusting," she said sweetly. "Losing someone you never met but living in their shadow. That's tough." Isaiah clenched his fists. "Don't talk like you know me." Cameron grabbed his jacket and keys, already checking his watch. "Let's not make a scene. Big day. I'll be home late. Be good." The door closed behind him with a gentle click. Savannah followed a few seconds later, her steps soft and sure. Isaiah stood there on the stair landing, invisible again, but his gut screamed louder than logic. If he didn't act now, there wouldn't be a later for Cameron. The house creaked around him as he moved silently down the hallway. Savannah had gone into the home office, just like always, to check press releases, though Isaiah knew it was more than that. He slipped into the kitchen and crouched near the pantry, pressing a hidden panel on the wall. The drawer slid open silently, revealing a maintenance terminal Ethan once showed him. "Don't tell Dad," Ethan had whispered. "This is where the real stuff runs." The screen blinked to life. Isaiah typed fast. The diagnostics map loaded. Everything appeared normal on the surface. But beneath the safety layer, he found a shadow script. A conditionally triggered brake override, a code that would make the vehicle fail precisely during descent scenarios. The route for today's test drive? Lookout Mountain Road, the same deadly turns where Ethan and Cameron's wife had died. Isaiah's breath caught. He backed away slowly. "But then, you really should ask permission before poking around in your dad's toys," Savannah said softly from behind him. He turned. She stood in the doorway, barefoot, holding a coffee mug like she was watching a morning cartoon. She walked closer, voice light. "What were you looking at?" Isaiah didn't blink. "You know what I was looking at?" Her smile stiffened. "That's a big accusation." "You're going to get him killed," Isaiah said. "He won't believe you," she replied evenly. "You're not even his real son." "Maybe not," Isaiah replied, "but I have the logs, and Clarence is pulling the exterior feeds right now." Her mask cracked, just a hairline fracture. Isaiah stood tall. "You made a mistake. You forgot Ethan showed me how to pull audit trails, and you forgot Clarence used to work in DC's cybercrime division." Savannah stepped back, calculating. Isaiah didn't wait for a reply. He bolted through the kitchen, grabbed his hoodie from the stair rail, and sprinted out into the cold. The sky was bruised with clouds, wind biting against his face. He ran across the street, heart pounding like a war drum. Clarence's house stood like a crooked castle of old books and ham radios. The front door opened before he could knock. "Saw you running," Clarence said, ushering him in. "You get anything?" Isaiah held up a flash drive. Clarence nodded. "Good. Let's save a life." The old man plugged it into an offline terminal. Data danced across the screen. Clarence muttered curses under his breath. "This isn't just sabotage. This is assassination." Isaiah's hands trembled. "Can we stop it?" Clarence nodded slowly. "Maybe, but we'll need someone inside." "Alex Boone," Isaiah said. "He's chief engineer. He'll believe you." "He'll believe you," Clarence corrected. "You're the kid." Isaiah's stomach twisted. "He's not really my dad," he murmured. Clarence looked at him with clear eyes. "Blood don't make a family, but standing up like this, that does." Isaiah didn't speak. He just nodded and clenched the flash drive tighter. Somewhere on a cold mountain road, Cameron Rivers was speeding toward a turn that wouldn't forgive him. And Isaiah, just a kid, just a shadow, was the only one who could stop it. The air inside Clarence's office was dense with static and the faint scent of burnt solder, like the space itself remembered every circuit it had ever repaired. Isaiah sat stiffly, his legs barely reaching the floor as the terminal buzzed and whirred beside him. Clarence adjusted a dial on the ham radio console, muttering to himself in a cadence that could have passed for spellcasting if it hadn't been so urgent. They cut the internal lines, he said finally, tapping the side of the screen. All Vantage comms are dark. Internal systems only. No access from outside the mesh net. That's not standard lockdown. That's quarantine. Someone doesn't want Cameron getting help. Isaiah's jaw tightened. Then we go around it. Clarence raised a brow. You're thinking like someone who's broken the rules before. I'm thinking like someone who wants to save his dad, Isaiah replied, then paused. Well, sort of, Dad. Clarence's eyes softened. You'll get there. Isaiah pointed at the old radio rig. Can it punch through to Alex's private band? The one on his test belt? Clarence smirked. Now you're really talking. He flipped 2 switches and the unit hummed louder. Only problem is, you've got to speak. He knows your voice. Won't ignore you the way he'd ignore me. Isaiah's throat suddenly felt like it had swallowed gravel, but he nodded. Okay. The mic crackled in his hand. He took a breath, closed his eyes, and said, Alex Boone, this is Isaiah Rivers. Repeat, Isaiah Rivers. I need you to listen. It's about the Vantage 1. Static. A brief silence. Then a voice came through, strained and confused. Isaiah, how the hell did you get this frequency? No time, Isaiah said quickly, stumbling over his own urgency. The break-in system's been altered. There's an override hidden under the diagnostics layer. Savannah used admin-level access. There's a kill switch triggered by descent force. Another pause. Then the tone shifted from confusion to alarm. How do you know this? Ethan showed me the logs once. I checked them last night. I pulled the audit trail. Clarence verified it. Clarence leaned toward the mic. It's true. We saw everything. It's sabotage, Boone. This isn't a prank. This is murder. Alex's voice came back, tense. Cameron left 20 minutes ago. He's already on the ridge. Then he won't survive the next curve, Isaiah said. Unless we warn him now. Alex's breath caught over the radio. I've been trying to patch the system, but it's rejecting my override. She firewalled my access. I can't reach him from inside the control net. Isaiah clenched his fists. Then we do it outside. We boost the signal. We go to the ridge. Clarence hesitated. Kid, it's snowing up there. It's steep, and we don't have much time. Isaiah didn't blink. Then we'd better run. 10 minutes later, Clarence's old Jeep skidded up the service road, tires scraping patches of ice and pine needles. Isaiah bounced in the passenger seat, heart beating so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. Beside him, a duffel bag sat packed with cables, batteries, a backup beacon, and a flare gun. The kind of kit for a rescue mission or a war. The ridge loomed above them like a sleeping giant, wrapped in frost and morning cloud. When the Jeep could go no farther, Isaiah leapt out, his shoes crunching on frozen gravel. He sprinted toward the collapsed remains of the old Vantage relay station while Clarence limped behind, toolkit swinging, breath short but determined. They reached the antenna. Isaiah climbed the twisted metal scaffolding like he'd been born to it, clipped the battery pack in place, wired the mic, adjusted the satellite dish just enough to catch line of sight through the trees. Clarence cursed under his breath and finally wheezed, All right, he's probably within reach. Try now. Isaiah gripped the mic. Cameron Rivers, Dad, please respond. It's urgent. Nothing. Dad, it's me. Isaiah. His voice cracked. Please, you're not safe. The system's been hacked. Savannah did it. The logs prove it. The override triggers on descent force. You're about to enter the spine. You won't survive that turn. Still silence. Then, after an eternity of dead air, Isaiah! A rough whisper. Isaiah's breath stopped. I know I'm not your real son, he said quickly. I know I don't look like Ethan. I know I sit in his seat and live in his room and wear his hand-me-down sweaters, but I am still your family. You took me in, and I'm asking you now, not as a hacker or a kid or some mistake you signed for, please trust me. Hit the kill. Jump if you have to. Just don't take that turn. A long silence. Then, copy. They heard it before they saw it. A screech, a whine of rubber, then silence again, and then, finally, the curve below revealed it. A figure tumbling through snow and scrub. A metallic flash as the Vantage 1 launched through the guardrail, unmanned, skidding sideways in the air before it crashed into the trees with a distant, terrible crunch. Isaiah screamed before he realized it. Clarence grabbed his shoulder. He jumped, he gasped. The crazy old bastard jumped. They bolted. The descent was hell, loose soil, branches that clawed like fingers. Isaiah's knees buckled more than once, but he didn't stop. They found Cameron lying halfway up the slope, tangled in thorny underbrush, bleeding from his scalp, eyes dazed but open. You little genius, he rasped. Isaiah laughed or cried or both. Don't move, he said. Please don't move. Clarence arrived with the first aid kit. They wrapped his ribs, braced his arm, and stabilized his head. Cameron wheezed but stayed conscious. You were right, he said. I was wrong. Isaiah held his hand. We're not done yet. Clarence looked up from the gauze roll. Not a word to 911, he said. Not yet. If Savannah knows he's alive, she'll vanish. We need to trap her first. Cameron nodded weakly. She didn't just try to kill me. She planned for it to look clean. Emergency succession protocol transfers the company to her under grief clause. She becomes CEO by noon today. No questions asked. Isaiah's face hardened. Then we don't let her have noon. Back at Clarence's cabin, they converted the office into a recovery room. While Cameron lay in bed, hooked to IVs, Isaiah sent the audit logs to Stephen Hale Cameron's former legal advisor and corporate enemy of Savannah. The old man replied with 2 words, on it. An hour later, Isaiah stood on a suburban lawn in a neighborhood that smelled like magnolias and lawn fertilizer. The brass nameplate read S. Hale. The man who opened the door looked like he could scare a courtroom silent with just a raised eyebrow. You'd better be here to ruin someone important, he said. Isaiah held up a flash drive. My name is Isaiah Rivers. I have proof Cameron's alive. And someone tried to kill him this morning. Hale blinked, then stepped aside. Come in. Inside, the walls were lined with books and the scent of whiskey-soaked leather. Hale moved fast, scanning files, murmuring to himself. She's smart, but this is first-degree sabotage. He turned. Where's Cameron now? Safe, Isaiah said, but not for long if she finds him. Hale nodded. We move now. I'll file a freeze on all transfers. If she tries to sign anything, the system will flag her. You bought us time. What happens after? Isaiah asked. We go public, Hale replied, and we make sure the world knows the boy who warned his father didn't whisper in vain. The night air pressed heavy against the windows of Clarence's cabin, thick with tension and the hum of machines. Cameron lay on the converted cot in the back office, bandaged and pale, his eyes half-lidded as Isaiah sat by his side, watching the screen of his laptop with growing dread. The logs Hale had pulled were more than enough to freeze Savannah's executive ascension temporarily. But it wasn't enough to end this, because what Isaiah had found hidden deep in the diagnostic directories of the Vantage One wasn't just sabotage. It was something older, something deeper. A file marked Mirage that shouldn't have existed anymore. A file that predated Savannah's arrival at Vantage. A file written with Cameron's own credentials. But not by Cameron. At least, not the Cameron lying broken and breathing in the cot beside him. The metadata showed dates from before the fire at Eden Ridge, the abandoned research facility north of Denver, where Vantage once ran its most ambitious AI integration experiments. Everyone believed it burned down in an electrical accident. Everyone believed Alan Royce, the company's co-founder, died in that fire. But Isaiah didn't believe that anymore. The encryption around Mirage was sophisticated, military-grade, like nothing Vantage currently used in its consumer-facing products. It wasn't just a fail-safe override. It was a complete remote access protocol, capable of assuming full control of a vehicle's neural interface with almost no trace, capable of running without operator awareness, with geo-triggered engagement zones and predictive threat modeling. The most terrifying part wasn't what it did. It was how silently it had been built to live. Cameron stirred, groaning softly as he tried to sit up. Isaiah closed the laptop quickly. "Almost 5, he said. "You should rest." But Cameron pushed the blanket aside, rubbing his temples with shaking fingers. "I had a dream," he murmured, "about the old lab, the first one, Eden Ridge, before we moved everything to Silicon Beach. There was a prototype server we never decommissioned. We left it after the fire. I always meant to destroy it, but—" His voice trailed off. "You didn't?" Isaiah asked. "Something told me not to," Cameron replied. "I never signed the destruction order. The backup systems were off-grid. No internal logging. I kept the key card in my wallet, just in case." Isaiah nodded without hesitation. "We have to go there. Now." Cameron frowned. "That place is unstable. And if Alan's alive," Isaiah cut in, "then he's watching everything. And he's not just trying to kill you. He's trying to erase everything you built and use Mirage to control what comes after. He's still working, still hiding, and we've only seen the surface." Cameron sat upright, pain etched in the corners of his eyes. "We'll need transport. Quiet, untraceable." Clarence entered just then with a mug of coffee and a tired expression. "I know a guy," he said. "Retired Army buddy. Doesn't ask questions. Still owes me 3 favors and a bottle of bourbon." By sundown, the 3 of them were packed into an unmarked SUV driven by Dennis, a broad-shouldered man with crow's feet, a buzz cut, and the conversational charm of a sandbag. He drove without speaking, the vehicle silent except for the crackling of the police scanner he monitored out of habit. The road to Eden Ridge curled upward into the crags, swallowed by mossy stone and pine. The facility had been declared condemned and inaccessible, but the gate opened with a low electric hum when Cameron tapped his old card against the reader. Inside, the air was colder, sharper, as though time itself had gone still within the concrete walls. Isaiah stepped over a broken glass panel and followed Cameron into the shadows, flashlight flickering against peeling logos and rusted metal doors. They found the core chamber half collapsed but intact. The backup server loomed like a sleeping god, humming faintly with residual power. Cameron knelt and connected the fiber port with shaking hands. Isaiah set up his laptop, syncing systems, unlocking directory trees with every keystroke, and there it was. black rail. A folder buried under 6 layers of misdirection, marked with a series of nonsensical file names that, when recompiled, spelled out a name, A. Royce. The files opened into schematics, blueprints for AI subsystems far beyond what Vantage had ever officially developed. Emotion tracking, behavioral override, predictive aggression scoring, military vehicle targeting modules, adaptive consciousness simulations. None of it was legal. None of it was safe. And all of it had been stamped with internal approval tags. Cameron stared, speechless. "These are DARPA flags," he said. "This isn't Vantage, this is government code." Isaiah's pulse thundered. "Did you work with them?" Cameron shook his head slowly. "Not like this. We had meetings, consultations, but we never built for deployment. We signed ethics restrictions. This is Alan." "He faked the fire," Isaiah whispered. "He faked his death. He's been building in the shadows. Mirage wasn't a rogue idea. It was his comeback." They both turned at the creak of a door behind them. Dennis entered quickly, gun drawn. "We've got company," he said. "Black SUV, tinted windows, unmarked plates. They're coming fast." Cameron grabbed the laptop and backed toward the hallway. "We go now." But it was too late. A voice rang out, echoing through the broken stone, cold, smooth, and unmistakable. "You should have let it burn, Cameron." A figure stepped into the chamber. Tall, lean, gray coat open just enough to reveal the butt of a pistol. His face was older, sharper, but unmistakable. Alan Royce had not only survived, he had thrived, and behind him stood 2 men in tactical black, their faces blank, their eyes scanning every shadow. "I gave you everything," Alan said softly, "and you buried it under ethics committees and consumer regulations. You chose mediocrity. I chose evolution." "You tried to kill me," Cameron growled. "Because you were in the way," Alan replied calmly. "I had a vision. You had fear." Isaiah stepped forward. "You used Savannah to get close. You implanted Mirage in the core systems. You killed Ethan." Alan's eyes drifted to the boy. "You must be the replacement, the living apology." "I'm his son," Isaiah snapped, "and I'm not letting you erase him." Alan tilted his head. "Bold, dangerous. I see why he kept you." He turned to his men. "Get the drive." Cameron held the laptop tighter. "You'll have to kill me first." Alan's smile was thin. "As you wish." The lights exploded into darkness. A flashbang cracked. Smoke bloomed like fire, rushing through a tunnel. Isaiah dropped flat, crawling under a desk. He heard fists, gunfire, a grunt. Cameron's voice calling his name, a groan, then silence. Isaiah pulled his flashlight and scanned the room. Cameron lay bleeding near the server. Isaiah ran to him, heart hammering. "Can you walk?" "Get out of here," Cameron hissed. "Now." "No." Isaiah reached into his coat and pulled out a key fob, Ethan's old security key. A relic Cameron kept in his drawer, long forgotten. He pressed it against the wall. A hiss. A panel opened, revealing a hidden backup drive. Isaiah yanked it free, tucked it into his hoodie, and helped Cameron up. "We go through the maintenance shaft," he said. "I saw it in the schematics." Dennis met them near the back stairs, limping, his sleeve torn and bloodied. "They're regrouping. Truck's gone, but I've got the keys to the backup." "We just need 10 minutes, Isaiah said. "That's all." "What now?" Dennis asked as they burst through the side door into the freezing night. "Where do we go?" To the one place Alan won't expect, Isaiah said. We go public, but on our terms. The truck roared to life. Behind them, the fire of betrayal still smoldered. Ahead, a storm of truth was waiting to break. 3 weeks later, under a steel-gray Washington sky, Isaiah Rivers stood beside Cameron on the wide marble steps of the Hart Senate office building, his hands buried in his pockets, his shoulders squared despite the cold biting through his hoodie. News vans lined the curb like sentinels, lenses tracking their every breath. The press pool murmured with quiet urgency behind metal barricades, their voices buzzing like static before a lightning strike. Clarence stood nearby, calm but watchful, his eyes scanning every motion with the nerves of a man who'd lived through more betrayals than broadcasts. Cameron adjusted his tie slowly, the white bandage that once crossed his brow now replaced by a thin, healing scar, a mark of survival etched in flesh. He turned to Isaiah and asked softly, "You sure you want to do this?" Isaiah didn't hesitate. If we don't speak now, someone else's kid dies in silence. Cameron looked at him for a long moment. "You sound like Ethan." Isaiah nodded, his voice low. "I never met him, but I hope I make him proud today." The massive wooden doors opened. Inside, the hallway stretched like a cathedral of bureaucracy. Walls lined with portraits of men and women who once believed in systems that didn't always believe in them. Their footsteps echoed against the marble as they were escorted through security and into the hearing room. The committee chamber was already filled. Senators leaned forward over polished desks. Legal advisors whispered behind folders. The public seating overflowed with reporters, tech experts, lobbyists, and ordinary citizens who had followed every headline. The clerk called Cameron's name. He stepped forward, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore his oath. Then the room quieted as he began. 3 years ago, Cameron said, I lost my wife and my son in a crash that was declared an accident. I believed that. I accepted it. Because the alternative that someone inside my company tampered with the very system I designed was too much to face. But denial doesn't protect us from truth. It just delays justice. Isaiah sat behind him, clutching the flash drive in his palm. His fingers wrapped so tightly around it he could feel the shape of every corner. I was saved, Cameron continued, because my adopted son refused to be quiet. Because a child listened to the silence between diagnostics and found the voice no one else cared to hear. He turned, gestured to Isaiah. This is Isaiah. He's the reason I'm alive, and he's the reason Vantage will never lose its soul again. A senator leaned forward. Mr. Rivers, he said, this time to Isaiah, you're 11 years old. How did a child like you become involved in something of this scale? Isaiah stood slowly. Because I live there, he said. I live in the house where silence settled like dust. I live in the shadow of Ethan's room. I was never supposed to be part of this. I was supposed to stay invisible. But I saw Savannah access the override. I traced the Mirage file. I found the logs, and I remembered what Ethan taught me. His voice steadied. I'm also the son of a mechanic who died working 3 jobs before anyone learned his name. So I know what it feels like when people assume you don't matter. Murmurs moved across the room like a tide. What do you want from this committee? Another senator asked. Isaiah's eyes didn't waver. Accountability, transparency, an investigation into every system Mirage touched, every back door Alan Royce ever opened, every vehicle carrying a code designed for control, not safety. No more secrets. No more blind trust in machines that can be weaponized by the wrong hands. Cameron placed the flash drive on the table. Inside is everything: voice files, code logs, contributor lists, including the truth about Alan Royce. "Mr. Royce is presumed dead," the chairwoman said. "He isn't," Isaiah said. "He faked his death. He's been building Mirage into something worse, and he tried to kill my dad to cover it." The room shifted. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the stale Capitol air. Isaiah wasn't just giving testimony. He was indicting a system. By afternoon, subpoenas were issued. Hearings convened. The Mirage project was placed under immediate federal investigation. Alan Royce's old research accounts were frozen. Raids swept across remote facilities tied to his fake shell companies. Surveillance footage of Savannah's lounge confession was authenticated by the FBI. Across social media, Isaiah's speech was clipped, shared, quoted. They called him the boy who spoke, the son in the silence, the hacker heir. News anchors praised his bravery. Civil rights groups rallied behind him. AI ethics coalitions released public statements demanding reform. But Isaiah didn't care about the noise. He only cared about the silence that had been broken. Back home in Colorado, Isaiah sat with Cameron on the back porch of Clarence's cabin. The wind carried the smell of pine and wood smoke, the air clean in a way it never felt in Washington. Cameron sipped his tea slowly, his hand still bandaged, his voice raspier now but warmer. "You think Alan's gone for good?" he asked. Isaiah didn't answer right away. "I think men like him don't vanish. They wait. But this time when he comes back, the world won't be blind." Cameron nodded. "You ever wish I hadn't adopted you?" Isaiah looked down. "Every day I thought you forgot about me. After the accident, after the funeral, you stopped showing up, you stopped calling, you let the hearings happen without even a letter." Cameron's jaw tightened. "I couldn't look at another child and pretend I was okay." Isaiah's voice cracked. "And I couldn't look at another door and pretend someone was coming back." Silence again, but this time it was gentler. Finally, Cameron reached out, placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't just save my life. You gave it back to me." Isaiah looked up. His voice was small but clear. "We saved each other." The next morning, a press conference was held on the Capitol lawn. Clarence stood near the edge of the crowd wearing his best flannel and holding a sign that simply read, "Listen to the kid." Cameron stepped up first, reading a prepared statement that emphasized systemic flaws and proposed a joint commission on AI regulation. Then Isaiah approached the microphone. No speech, no script, just truth. "When I said the system was hacked, I didn't mean just the code. I meant the people, the boardroom, the silence around power, the way we treat kids like they're invisible until they're useful. But I'm not invisible anymore. And neither is this problem." He held up a copy of the Mirage schematic. "This isn't fiction. It's a warning." That night, the clip aired on every major network. It passed 1 million views by midnight. Journalists called it the most powerful testimony from a minor in recent political history. But for Isaiah, it was just relief. The sound of his voice no longer echoing into nothing. 1 week later, Cameron was called to testify again before a closed-door security briefing. Isaiah wasn't allowed in. So he waited in the hallway, backpack slung over his shoulder, rereading Ethan's old notebook pages of messy code, random sketches, lines of poetry about algorithms and loss. When Cameron emerged hours later, he looked exhausted but satisfied. "It's done," he said. "They're launching a full review of every neural architecture system on the market." "And Royce?" Isaiah asked. "Still missing, but his empire's unraveling, and we've got his footprint now. He won't build in silence again." Isaiah nodded, then asked, "Do you think Ethan would have liked me?" Cameron smiled, eyes glassy. "He would have envied your courage." Later that week, Isaiah appeared on a national children's panel about ethics in AI. When asked what advice he had for other kids who felt unheard, he simply said, "Start where the silence begins. Speak like someone's listening even when they're not, because eventually someone will." In the months that followed, Vantage restructured. Savannah faced charges. Royce was placed on the FBI's most wanted list. And Isaiah? He started building something new, a nonprofit coalition called Backseat, an acronym for Behavioral Accountability for Code Safety and Ethical AI Transparency. It became a platform for whistleblowers, student coders, and low-income voices in tech development. Cameron gave him full administrative rights. And, for the first time, Isaiah didn't feel like a shadow in someone else's story. He was writing his own. One autumn afternoon, months later, they returned to Lookout Mountain. The curve where it all nearly ended was quiet now. A new guardrail stood in place. A small plaque had been installed nearby and engraved by Clarence without permission or committee. "For those who speak, even when no one listens." Isaiah stood beside it, wind in his curls, eyes scanning the road. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He just stood still, letting the world breathe around him. Beside him, Cameron placed a hand on his back. "You still feel like the boy in the back seat?" Isaiah shook his head. "No," he said. "I'm the one holding the map."